I want to try a little thought experiment with you. If you're in a place where you can, not if you're driving or anything, but just close your eyes for a second. And I want you to picture a 2-year-old, maybe a 3-year-old. Just get that image in your mind. What's that toddler doing?
Probably making a mess.
Yeah.
Or, staring intently at a dust bunny.
Right, exactly. They're getting into absolutely everything. They're looking at a crack in the pavement like it's the most fascinating thing in the world. They're asking why about 100 times a minute until you just want to pull your hair out. They're like these little learning machines that you just can't turn off.
That's the factory setting for a human.
It really is. Curiosity isn't something you have to instill in a toddler. It's something you can barely keep up with. It's just how we're built.
Okay, now, I want you to shift that image. Fast forward, say, 12 or 13 years. Picture that exact same person, but now they're a teenager, and they're sitting in a classroom. What do you see now? Slumped shoulders.
Yeah.
Eyes. Maybe a little glazed over, probably looking at the clock on the wall. A lot.
Waiting for the bell. Just waiting for it to be over.
Yeah.
So here's the really big, bold question we're going to get into today. How did we get from that unstoppable spark of pure wonder to that? Is it possible that the entire system we've built to educate our children is actually working against the very way human beings are designed to learn?
And that is the central idea we're exploring today. And it's not just about, teenagers being teenagers. It's a much deeper question about whether the very structure of our schools might be, in a way, dismantling human potential.
Welcome to Book Bites. This is the podcast where we discuss a new book every week, and we do it in a way that helps English learners improve their English. I'm your host, and today we are unpacking a book that I think strikes a nerve with pretty much anyone who's ever sat at a desk and stared at a clock. We're talking about Creative Schools by the late Sir Ken Robinson and Lou Aronica.
This book is it's a really important one. You might know Sir Ken Robinson from his TED Talk. I believe it's still the most watched one in history. But this book is where he lays it all out. It's the blueprint, really. It dives into that huge gap between how we learn naturally and how we're taught in schools. And more importantly, it offers what he calls a hopeful path forward.
And before we start walking down that path, I just want to gently bring your attention to something we've created for you. There's a special online worksheet for this discussion. It's designed specifically to help you test your understanding of the vocabulary and the big ideas we're going to cover. It's not just a quiz, it's a real tool to help you actively use the English you're hearing today.
It's a fantastic resource for making the learning stick. I really recommend checking it out.
You can find the link for that right in the description box below. Now, this is episode 4 of our series, and the book is Creative Schools by Ken Robinson and Lou Aronica. So let's start at the beginning, because when you walk into a typical school today, the rows of desks, the bells ringing, the periods, it all feels so permanent, so inevitable. Like, of course this is what school is. But the book makes a powerful case that this design isn't natural at all. It was invented.
And invented for a very specific purpose.
Yeah.
And relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, if you really want to understand why our schools look the way they do, you don't start by looking at child psychology or ancient philosophies of learning. You look at economic history.
Yeah.
Specifically, the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution. So we're talking steam engines, factories, the big shift from farms to cities in the 18th and 19th centuries. That's where this all comes from.
That's the blueprint. Before that era, education was... well, it was completely different. For the most part, formal education was for the very elite, people destined for the clergy or government. For almost everyone else, learning was an apprenticeship. It was hands-on. You learned a trade from your family or a master craftsman. It was completely integrated into daily life.
So you learn by doing,
Right.
not by sitting and listening.
Exactly. But then the economy just got her. It was completely upended. Suddenly, you have this enormous demand for a totally new kind of person, a new kind of worker. Factories were popping up everywhere, and factories have a very particular need. They need a workforce.
A massive workforce.
A massive workforce, but also a specific type of workforce. They didn't really need creative, independent thinkers who might question the process or try to reinvent the wheel. That would be inefficient. They needed people, thousands of them, who were, above all, compliant. They needed people who would show up on time, follow simple, standardized instructions, and do the same repetitive task for 10 or 12 hours straight without, getting distracted or complaining.
So creativity on an assembly line isn't just not helpful, it's actually a problem. It gets in the way.
It's a liability. It slows things down. The key words were efficiency and standardization. And so governments in the West and eventually all over the world, started building public education systems that were, sometimes explicitly, modeled on the factories they were designed to serve.
Wow. When you put it that way, it sounds a little sinister, like something out of a novel.
It can be unsettling to think about, but the evidence is just everywhere.
Hmm.
The book calls this the industrial imprint, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Just look at the basic structure of a school day.
Okay, let's really break that down. This industrial imprint. What are some specific examples of a school looking and feeling like a factory?
Well, let's start with the most obvious one. The bell. Why do schools have bells?
To tell you when to change classes, when it's time for recess or lunch.
Right. But what is the psychological effect of that? In a factory, a whistle or a bell signals the start and end of a shift. It's a tool of control. In a school, that bell constantly interrupts the natural flow of human concentration. You could be, I don't know, deep into solving a complex math problem, that moment where it's all starting to click, you're in the zone, and then RIIing.
Yeah.
Pencils down, stop doing math. Now walk down a crowded hallway and start doing history.
It teaches you that the schedule is more important than the learning, that the clock matters more than your own focus.
Precisely. Then you have what the book calls batch processing.
Batch processing, that sounds cold, like you're making cookies or assembling car parts.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a factory, you process raw materials in batches for efficiency. In schools, we do the same thing. We group children together based on one single metric: their date of manufacture, their birth year.
That's a brutal way to put it, date of manufacture. But it's true.
It's based on this bizarre assumption that all 9-year-olds or all 14-year-olds are at the exact same point in their development, that they have the same interests, the same abilities, and learn at the same pace. And we all know that's absurd. Any parent of more than one child knows that's just not true. But the system is built on this idea, and it treats any variation from the norm as a problem, a defect to be corrected.
So we have the bells, we have the batching. What else is part of this imprint?
Well, there's the curriculum itself. It's standardized. Knowledge is broken down into these separate, isolated parts: math, science, history, language arts. And they rarely ever connect to each other. It's like an assembly line where one worker puts on the tires and another worker puts on the doors, but nobody is really encouraged to understand how the whole car works.
And the teacher in this model, what's their role? They're not a guide, I'm guessing.
In the factory model, the teacher becomes the supervisor, the line manager. Their primary job shifts from inspiring discovery to, well, to ensuring that the workers, the students, stay on task, remain quiet, and meet the production quota, which is the standardized test. It becomes about classroom management and covering the curriculum rather than uncovering a child's potential.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture of the origins, but that was a long time ago. We're in the 21st century. We have smart boards and tablets and classrooms. Surely things have changed since then.
That's the really interesting part. The book argues that in many critical ways, the industrial logic has actually become more intense. We've bolted new technology onto the old chassis, but the engine is the same. We're now deep in the era of what's called the standards and accountability movement.
Right. This is all about the big standardized tests, the league tables between countries.
Exactly. Fueled by global economic competition and things like the PISA test results, governments all over the world decided the way to fix education was to tighten the screws, to double down on standardization. The focus has shifted almost entirely to pouring pre-digested information into students' heads, filling the vessel, as they say, so they can pour it back out on a multiple-choice test. We've become obsessed with data points, not with genuine understanding.
It sounds like we're trying to fix a broken machine by making it run faster and hotter instead of asking if maybe we need a completely different kind of machine.
That's a perfect analogy. We're optimizing for an obsolete goal. We're getting better and better at doing something that we maybe shouldn't be doing at all.
I want to just take a moment here and turn this question over to you who are listening right now. Think about your own time in school. Did it feel like being on a conveyor belt? When that bell rang, did it feel like you were being processed? Or was your experience different? I would genuinely love to hear about it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. It's always so eye-opening to see the range of experiences people have had.
It really is. Those personal stories are so powerful.
So we have this factory model, this industrial imprint, and it works great if you're making toasters, but what's the actual human cost when you apply this model to children?
The cost is immense. And it all stems from one core, flawed assumption. The idea that all children learn in the same way, at the same pace.
Which we know is just fundamentally not true.
Think about us as adults. If you get a new gadget, say a new phone or a new coffee maker, how do you learn to use it?
Oh, for me, I throw the manual away and I start pushing all the buttons. I learn by trial and error.
Right, you're a kinesthetic learner, you learn by doing, but some people, they will sit down and read that manual from the first page to the last before they even plug the thing in. Others will immediately go to YouTube to find a tutorial video.
And none of those ways is the wrong way. They're just different.
They're just different. Visual, auditory, reading, doing. We all have our preferences. Children are exactly the same. But the traditional school system overwhelmingly rewards just one type. The student who can sit still for long periods, listen passively to a lecture, and then reproduce that information in writing.
So if you're a push-the-buttons kind of kid, you're often seen as a problem.
You're labeled. You're disruptive, you're unfocused, you might even get diagnosed with a disorder. And the book outlines the specific damage this model causes. The first casualty is curiosity.
How so?
The system is obsessed with the one right answer.
Because that's easy to mark on a standardized test. It's either A, B, C, or D.
Exactly. It's efficient to grade. But life, real problems, they're almost never about finding one single right answer. They're messy and complex. When we train children for years and years that their job is to find the one answer the teacher has in their head, it just kills their natural desire to ask what if, or to explore unconventional solutions. It teaches them not to take intellectual risks.
Okay, so it suppresses curiosity. What's next?
Next is chronic disengagement. We just call it boredom.
Right. The glazed eyes we talked about.
But the book makes a really critical point here, that boredom isn't a moral failing on the part of the student. It's often a perfectly rational response to a system that feels utterly irrelevant to their lives. If you're sitting in a class thinking, when will I ever use this, or why does this matter, and you're given no compelling answer, then mentally checking out is a form of self-preservation. They're not learning, they're just doing school.
Doing school. That's a powerful and kind of a heartbreaking phrase. It's about compliance, not engagement.
And that leads to a massive waste of talent. This is a central theme for Ken Robinson. The system has a very narrow hierarchy of what it values. Academic ability, particularly in math and languages, is at the top. Everything else is secondary.
So if you're a gifted artist or an amazing mechanic or someone with incredible social skills,
Those talents are often ignored or even seen as distractions from the real work. I'm sure we all know someone who is brilliant with their hands, who could build or fix anything, but felt like a failure in school because they struggled with abstract equations.
yeah, I have a friend just like that. He's a genius with engines, but he told me he spent his entire school career feeling stupid.
That is the tragedy the book describes. That person's self-esteem is damaged because the system's definition of smart is too narrow to include them. We are squandering so much human talent. And this ties into inequality. The reliance on standardized tests often ends up reinforcing existing social divides rather than closing them.
How does that happen?
Well, for one, families with more resources can afford private tutors, test prep courses, and other advantages. But it's also that the tests themselves are often culturally biased. The language and the scenarios used can be more familiar to children from certain socioeconomic backgrounds. So instead of being a great equalizer, the testing system can actually deepen the gap.
And the final outcome of all this?
The final outcome is the skills gap. We have so many young people graduating, they have their diplomas, they've jumped through all the hoops, but they enter the workforce lacking the very skills that the modern world demands. Things like adaptability, collaboration, critical thinking, creative problem solving. The factory produced the part, but the part doesn't fit the new machine.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty heavy diagnosis of the problem. It feels like
Yeah.
a huge systemic issue. But as you said at the beginning, this isn't just a book about what's wrong. It offers a solution. It offers hope.
It does. And the entire solution starts with a simple but profound shift. We need to change the guiding metaphor.
And before we dive into that new metaphor, I just want to gently remind you, if you're finding this conversation helpful or interesting, please take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. And if you know anyone, a parent, a teacher, another student who would appreciate this, please share with them.
We really do appreciate the support. It helps us build this community.
Okay, so changing the metaphor. If the factory is the wrong model for a school, what's the right one?
Sir Ken Robinson suggests we look to agriculture. Not industrial agriculture, but the organic farm. The school should be seen as a garden, and the role of an educator is that of an organic farmer.
An organic farmer. Okay, I like that. Unpack that for me. What does that mean?
Think about the fundamental difference in philosophy. Industrial agriculture is about control and maximizing yield at all costs. It uses chemical fertilizers and pesticides to force the plants to grow in a uniform way. It's all about the output.
It's another factory, just outdoors.
In a way, yes. But an organic farmer has a different mindset. They know they cannot make a plant grow. You can't go out and pull on a sprout to make it taller. It doesn't work. The farmer's job is not to force the growth, but to create the optimal conditions for growth to happen naturally. They focus on the health of the soil, the ecosystem of the farm.
That's a beautiful image. So in education, this means we stop trying to manufacture standardized students, and instead we start trying to cultivate unique individuals.
Exactly. The focus shifts from the product to the process, from the output to the environment. The book lays this out using 4 key principles of this organic approach.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first principle is health. This means we have to focus on the development of the whole child, not just their academic intellect. Their physical, emotional, spiritual, and social well-being are all interconnected.
Right. You can't teach calculus to a child who is chronically stressed or feeling unsafe.
Or who's hungry or sleep-deprived. An organic school understands that a child's well-being is the foundation for all learning. It prioritizes that well-being over a test score because it knows a healthy, happy child will learn more effectively anyway.
That just seems like common sense, doesn't it? What's the second principle?
The second is ecology. This principle views the school not as a building, but as a living community, a complex ecosystem. It understands that learning doesn't just happen in isolated classrooms with the doors shut, it's interconnected.
The book had that amazing case study about this. The school called Grangeton.
Yes, Grange Primary School. It's a phenomenal example. The head teacher, Richard Gerver, basically transformed the entire school into a functioning model town that the children ran themselves. It was called Grangeton.
What did that actually look like?
Well, the students weren't just students, they were citizens. They ran a town council, they had a business center, they published a newspaper, they operated a market, and the learning was embedded in all of it.
So instead of a worksheet on percentages.
They were calculating profit and loss for their market stall. Instead of a sterile writing prompt, they were journalists reporting on school events for the Grangeton newspaper. The subjects, math, literacy, civics, they were all connected to a real meaningful purpose. It was a true ecosystem of learning.
That sounds so much more engaging. So we have health and ecology. What's number 3?
Number 3 is fairness. And here, the book makes a crucial distinction between equality and equity.
An important difference that often gets confused.
It does. Equality is giving everyone the exact same thing. The same textbook, the same amount of time, the same test. But fairness or equity is about giving every child what they individually need to succeed. It's about recognizing that different children have different starting points, different strengths, and different challenges. It also means celebrating diverse talents, equally valuing the natural leader just as much as the straight-A academic student.
It's about personalization, not standardization. And the fourth principle.
The fourth, and perhaps the most important, is care. The relationship between the teacher and the student is the absolute bedrock of learning. It has to be built on a foundation of compassion, trust, and mutual respect. In a factory, you don't need to care about the widget on the assembly line. In a garden, care is everything.
That's the perfect transition, because if the school is a garden, then that completely redefines the role of the teacher. They become the gardener.
That is the new metaphor. The teacher as a gardener.
I really love that image. It feels like it takes a certain kind of pressure off the teacher. You know, if you see yourself as a factory supervisor, you're responsible for the quality control of the final product. It's all on you. But if you're a gardener,
You understand your role differently. You realize you can't force the growth. As we said, you can't pull on the plant to make it grow. The gardener's skill is in providing the right conditions, preparing the soil, ensuring there's enough water and sunlight. The potential for growth is already there, inside the seed. Your job is to enable it.
And the book's argument is that the potential to learn, that seed of curiosity, is inside every single child.
Absolutely. We have powerful evidence that humans are just natural-born learners. The book highlights the work of Sugata Mitra and his famous hole-in-the-wall experiments.
Yes, this story is incredible. Tell us about that.
So, back in 1999, Sugata Mitra and his team basically put a computer with an internet connection into a hole in a wall bordering a slum in New Delhi, India. The children in that area had almost no education, they had no experience with computers, and crucially, most didn't speak English, which was the language of the operating system.
And he didn't give them any instructions, no teacher.
Absolutely nothing. He just left it there with a hidden camera and watched to see what would happen. And the results were just astounding. The children were curious. They gathered around it. They started touching it, exploring, figuring it out through trial and error. Within hours, they had taught themselves how to point, click, and browse the internet. Within days, they were teaching each other.
That's just mind-blowing. It proves that with access to tools and the freedom to be curious, learning just happens.
It's the default state. The drive to learn is innate. The job of the teacher, the gardener, is to create an environment that nurtures that innate drive instead of suppressing it.
So let's get practical. How does a teacher actually do that? How do you make that shift in the classroom from being a supervisor to being a gardener?
The book outlines several key practices. The first is to ignite engagement. This means you have to find ways to connect the curriculum to the students' own lives, their own passions.
So, like the example of using a student's love for soccer to teach principles of physics.
That's a perfect example. Instead of just talking about parabolas and velocity as abstract concepts, you analyze the arc of a perfect free kick. Suddenly the student cares. You've hooked the new information onto their existing passion.
That makes so much sense. What's another practice?
Another is creating a culture of high expectations and trust. The gardener has to believe in the seed. A teacher has to genuinely believe in the potential of every student. When you create a climate of trust, a safe space where students know it's okay to make mistakes and try again, that's when they'll take the intellectual risks necessary for deep learning.
And what's the third one?
The third is a concept called scaffolding. It's a term from construction, but it's used in education to describe a specific way of helping.
How does that work?
You provide just enough support to help a student reach the next level, and then as they become more competent, you gradually remove that support. It's like teaching a child to ride a bike. First you hold the seat, then you run alongside them, and eventually you let go. The ultimate goal is autonomy. You're teaching them how to learn on their own.
Right. The greatest success for a teacher is when the student doesn't need them anymore.
That is the ultimate goal.
I want to pause here for our second gentle reminder about the worksheet. We've just used some really important vocabulary for education in this section. Words like scaffolding, engagement, autonomy, kinesthetic. These are great words to add to your English vocabulary. So please don't forget to check out that worksheet in the description box to practice them. It's the best way to make them your own.
Active use is always the key to remembering.
Okay, so we have the environment of the garden, and we have the guide, the gardener. But that brings us to a huge question. What are we actually trying to grow? What are we teaching? As we said earlier, the world is changing so fast, we can't possibly predict the jobs that will exist in 20 years.
And that's exactly why the old model of just teaching content and facts is obsolete. You can't just memorize a set of information for a job that might not exist. The book argues we need to shift from teaching subjects to cultivating competencies.
Competencies. So these are underlying skills that allow you to learn and do just about anything.
That's right. They're the all-purpose tools for navigating an unknown future. The book outlines 8 of them, which it calls the 8 C's.
The 8 C's. Okay, let's break these down. The book divides them into 2 main groups, right?
Yes. The first 3 form what it calls the cognitive and creative foundation. These are about how we process the world and generate ideas.
Okay, hit me with the first C.
The first, and maybe the most fundamental, is curiosity. We've talked about this already. It's that engine of achievement, the desire to ask questions and find out. The book argues that a primary mission of any school must be to protect and nurture this flame. If a student graduates with a head full of facts but has lost their curiosity, the school has failed them.
I couldn't agree more. What's the second C?
The second is creativity. This is defined as the process of having original ideas that have value. And it's really important to stress that this is not just about the arts. Scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, they're all creative. It involves what's called divergent thinking, which is generating lots of possible ideas, and convergent thinking, which is analyzing and choosing the best one.
And the third C in this group?
The third is criticism, which is another word for critical thinking. In an age of information overload and misinformation, this skill is non-negotiable. It's the ability to analyze information, to evaluate arguments, to spot logical fallacies, and to form your own reasoned judgments. It's the skill of not believing everything you see on the internet.
Which might be the single most important survival skill for the 21st century.
It's certainly up there.
I want to pose a question to everyone listening. Of these first 3 C's, curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking, which one do you feel is most lacking in education today? Which one do you wish you had been taught more of? I'd be really interested to see your answers in the comments.
That's a great question. A tough one, but a great one.
Okay, so that's the cognitive foundation. What's the second group of C's?
The next 5 make up what the book calls the social and emotional fabric. These are the competencies that allow us to live and work well with others and with ourselves. They're often dismissed as soft skills, but they are absolutely essential.
So what's C number 4?
Number 4 is communication. This is about more than just grammar and vocabulary. It's about being able to express your ideas clearly and persuasively, whether you're speaking, writing, or presenting. And just as importantly, it's about being able to listen with empathy and understanding.
Absolutely crucial. What's number 5?
Number 5 is collaboration, the ability to work constructively in teams.
This is a huge one for me, because in the traditional school model, working together is often called cheating. But in virtually every professional field, it's called teamwork, and it's essential.
Exactly. Almost all of humanity's greatest achievements, from scientific breakthroughs to building cities, were collective efforts. Yet our schools often force students to compete and work in isolation. We need to explicitly teach the skills of collaboration.
Okay, that's 5. What's number 6?
And number 6 is compassion. This is about empathy, kindness, and understanding the perspectives and feelings of others. This is the foundation of all ethical behavior. If we create graduates who are very clever but lack compassion, we are creating a more dangerous, not a better world.
That's a powerful point.
Mhm.
Very true. What's number 7?
Number 7 is composure. This is all about inner balance and emotional regulation. It's about mindfulness, managing stress, and developing resilience in the face of setbacks. It's the ability to remain calm and focused in an increasingly frantic world.
I think most adults could use a course in that one.
I think we all could. And that brings us to the final C, number 8, citizenship.
And I'm guessing this is more than just memorizing the branches of government.
Much more. It's about being an active, informed, and responsible member of your community, whether that's your local neighborhood or the global community. It's about understanding your rights and responsibilities and having the desire to contribute to the common good. It's knowing that you are part of something larger than yourself.
So there they are, the 8 C's. Curiosity, creativity, criticism, communication, collaboration, compassion, composure, and citizenship. I mean, if a student graduated from school having developed all of those, they would be prepared for anything life throws at them.
They would be more than just college and career ready. They would be life ready.
So this is the vision. The organic garden, the teacher as gardener, cultivating these 8 C's. It sounds wonderful as it sounds.
Yeah.
But the big question is always, how do we make it happen? This can't just be up to individual teachers, can it? They're working within a massive system.
No, and that's a critical point the book makes. A single teacher can be a gardener in their own classroom. But to transform the whole farm, you need a collective effort. It truly takes a village.
So who are the other major players in making this change happen?
Well, first you have the principal, or the head teacher, the leader of the school. They have to be what the book calls a culture creator. Their job is to create an environment that empowers teachers, that encourages them to innovate and take calculated risks. The book mentions Richard Gerver again, the principal of Grangeton, who saw his main job as giving his teachers the permission and the support to be creative.
So the principal is the head gardener who sets the climate for the whole school.
Exactly. Then moving up, you have the policymaker. This includes governing officials, people on school boards. Their role needs to shift dramatically. They need to stop micromanaging schools from a distance with top-down mandates. Instead, they need to provide support and give schools more autonomy to meet the needs of their specific communities. The book gives a great example from South Carolina, where they engaged the whole community, parents, business leaders, students in designing a new vision for their schools. It wasn't dictated, it was co-created.
And that leads to the final group, I imagine.
Yes, the community itself. Parents and local businesses can't just be outsiders. The school shouldn't be a fortress that locks its gates at 3 p.m. It should be a hub for the entire neighborhood. Parents need to be treated as genuine partners in their child's education. Businesses can provide internships, mentorships, real-world learning opportunities. The walls between the school and the community need to become permeable.
It really does sound like everyone has a role to play in this transformation.
Everyone does. It's a shared responsibility.
Before we move into our final wrap-up, I just want to offer our last gentle reminder. If you found this conversation valuable, please consider liking the episode and subscribing to the channel. Your support is what allows us to keep having these kinds of in-depth discussions.
And we are truly grateful for every single listener.
So let's try to bring all these threads together. Let's summarize the journey we've been on today. We started by looking at the factory model of education, a system that was designed for the Industrial Revolution, a system built on standardization, conformity, and compliance.
And we saw how that system, which is still largely in place, often ends up suppressing the very human qualities we now need most. Things like curiosity, creativity, and collaboration.
Then we shifted to the alternative vision presented in the book, the organic model, thinking of the school as a garden, where the role of the teacher is to be a gardener who cultivates potential.
A model that's built on four principles: promoting the overall health of the child, creating a rich ecology of learning, ensuring fairness and equity, and grounding everything in a culture of care.
And we ended by looking at what we should be cultivating. The 8 C's, the essential competencies that will prepare young people for a complex and unpredictable future.
And I think it's so important to reemphasize a point the book makes very clearly. This is not about lowering standards or making things easier.
Not at all.
It's about raising them. It's about having a much higher and broader definition of success. It's about creating people who are not just smart in the narrow academic sense of being good at taking tests, but who are also wise, compassionate, creative, and resilient. It's about the full and flourishing development of a human being.
The goal is to see every single child as a unique seed, full of incredible, unique potential.
That's the heart of it all.
I want to leave all of you with one final thought to reflect on. If we actually change the way we educate our children, if we manage to make this profound shift from the factory to the garden, we're not just changing schools, we are fundamentally changing the society of the future. Just imagine for a moment what a generation of people raised with a deep capacity for compassion, collaboration, and critical thinking could solve. What kind of world that they could build.
It's a very hopeful vision to hold on to.
Thank you so much for joining us for this exploration of creative schools.
It has been a real pleasure.
And for the last time, one final reminder. Don't forget to go to the description box and download that worksheet. It's the absolute best way to practice and solidify everything we've talked about today.
It will really help you lock in the learning.
And I have one last question for you to answer in the comments section. If you could change just one thing about the education system based on today's discussion, what would it be? Pick one thing. Let us know your thoughts.
I am very much looking forward to reading those responses.
And finally, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this with your friends and family if you found it useful. Thanks for listening to Book Bites. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.